So few that have gone 400, no one would have said 400 games.
Well, not many have done it.
The best player that's ever played the game.
Mick, taking your mind back to the pre-season of 2006, what were your first impressions of Scott Pendlebury?
My early memory of him was that I used to always run a sort of a semi-draft camp. It was a camp for the draftees. So because we got them after our normal camp, which was basically all the players that we had, I always thought they missed out. So I used to take them here, there and everywhere. And we went down to Lorne with that group. And my immediate thing was he's a different type of player, different type of person, because he was pretty harsh on the blokes. And I thought, well, that's pretty strong coming from an 18-year-old. But Scotty was really switched on to doing what he had to do.
He was actually pretty quiet, very diligent, but just went about his business with a minimum of fuss. And he really hasn't changed that much.
When I started at the club in 2011, I was head of development and he was, just starting his journey really. Like, I'm sure he would have played over 100 games by then, but the ultimate professional, just the training standards, like it was so professional. Players weren't required back to a certain date and he was always one of the first in the door when required, and so fit and so diligent. Incredible role model for others.
It was relatively evident early days that he had that.
He immediately sort of, my ears pricked up and thought, this bloke's different, because he's almost switched on from the word go.
But you never would have anticipated that he was going to be able to be as consistent and build momentum as he has over such a long period of time.
There's so few that have gone 400, no one would have said 400 games.
Well, not many have done it. It's an unbelievable, significant milestone for the game and for him and for our club, and it's a testament to longevity and so many different layers to it. Yeah, there's a reason why not many do it, because it's bloody hard to do. To perform at that level consistently, it's inspiring for many.
Come again here to go, he scoops it up. Here's Pendlebury. What a moment this is. What a moment for the captain. That's a captain's goal.
Feels like a final, does it really does. I hope it's as good next Sunday. Pendlebury for a second goal. Well, that was nearly as good as the first.
The ones that make 400 games are fairly unique, and they've got a characteristic about them. Injury-wise, they've been pretty safe. They don't get big injuries, and they've all got pace. Now, Scott's going to join them. He's had a couple of injuries, but he's not lightning. But he's made it up with by not losing any pace, probably from his third or fourth year. And if he has, it's not noticeable because he's still able to slow the game down. That's why players are able to get there, and he's been able to get there on the basis that a body that goes into the middle in today's football, they hit hard. They tackle hard. To be able to get through his whole career playing in that role is unbelievable. 19 seasons, so it's a lot of seasons to be knocked around.
Ball in flight. Reads it better than most.
Well, they've got a bit of a problem. This bloke is absolutely slaughtering them, Pendlebury.
Every man and his dog going for that footy.
He's got Pendlebury now, running to 50. The champ, long and through. First of the afternoon, Collingwood.
The 95% of the iceberg that didn't pop through the surface, which I've never seen, were the decisions that we make at home. The hot colds, the diet. He's like a sponge, absorbing all of this information, and everyone can do that, absorb the information, but how do you put it into action? And Pendles did that.
I just think he's got a thirst for knowledge. He wants to be the best. He wants to play in the best team, and you've got those ingredients. And he's got the discipline then to go about it. It's, you just said to me it's 19th year. It's quite amazing.
But again, I don't know if there's going to be another 100 Scott Pendleburys. It's just the game suggests it's very few that get to do this. It takes a uniqueness.
Scott has arguably been the most consistent player in the history of the Collingwood Football Club. What traits do you think set him apart?
Oh, the time and space is absolutely his greatest asset.
Time and space. He just stands still when he has the ball. Some just have it, they just feel so comfortable in it. And maybe that's his basketball background, that he can just see space awareness better than others. He'll be forever remembered as somebody that will just take somebody who's just with the ball and then end up over this way. But they keep falling for it.
That's a gift. You can't teach that. There's a lot of things that coaches will take credit for, but there's a lot of things in the champions that are innate, and they bring along and they just hone in on those things and they become their greatest asset.
Pendlebury through traffic, and again it's Mason Cox who's found inside.
If there's one thing that I suppose that encapsulates Pendles is he's his own man. He's more than confident to do it his own way. If he doesn't agree with a particular course of action or the way something's been done, he'll voice it, but then if it's not picked up, well, he won't die in a ditch about it. He'll just move on with what he can control. I think it's a pretty good metaphor for life. Like, if you worry about the things you can't control, and then you haven't got as much time for the things that you can. But he's always been a person who has absolutely committed himself to the things that he can control and made a habit of doing those consistently well. Everyone makes mistakes as they go along, but he doesn't repeat his. He's learnt how to be a better product in every part of his life from what I've witnessed.
As a senior coach, you are looking for absolute buy-in in terms of the game plan that you're trying to implement. Scott has been largely regarded as one of the great on-field leaders of the modern era. Can you put it into words what it's like having a player who can shape the way that the game is played on field?
Well, I feel like I'm right there now. Like, I'm obviously in a position not too far from where we're just looking at each other and calling out phases of the game, and he's sort of putting his hand up going, yeah, we got it. And then watching him just, manipulate that throughout the whole team. To have somebody that is an extension of the coaches or the game plan, it's remarkable. And all the finals are a reflection of that. At the moments that we need somebody to lead, he sits in front and orchestrates most things. Incredibly gifted in that sense and selfless in that sense. Yeah, somewhat of a quarterback is probably a good analogy of it. He's maybe even a conductor. He's probably more of a conductor and a quarterback.
From 2010 through to 21, the number of conversations that we had about what was happening on the week-to-week cycle, what was happening in a macro sense, things that we were doing that he thought that we could do better or didn't need to do, and to be able to have someone with his perspective and his knowledge was crucial for me as a senior coach at the time. He was the on-field extension of whatever I was trying to do, whatever we were trying to do as a coaching group. He was definitely executing that on field, and sometimes just doing what he wanted to do, which would often work. So it's not bad when the plans you go in with are bested by a guy who's actually on the field and going and getting them done. So it's not a bad thing to have as a coach.
When you've got, there was 100,000, there are restrictions on getting messages out there at the right time. You just need to have great faith in players setting up the moment, because they've only got that moment to think about. It's a luxury for Collingwood. And it's been a luxury for probably 7 or 8 to 10 years that they've got the coach that sits in here and they've got a coach that sits out on the ground and knows it back to front.
It's free, use them straight away. Don't hang on to the ball and then try and use them late. Just use them and then just run. Have fun out there.
I'm really grateful for when I took over, I had somebody like Scott to work with to make change and inspire others and lead. He hasn't wavered in his support for me, and that'll never go lost. It'll never get lost.
When the final chapter closes on Scott's playing career, where do you think he'll sit amongst Collingwood's greatest players?
I try not to get caught up in that because of the eras. how good was Coventry kicking so many goals. I heard a lot about Bobby Rose, but I think he might have retired at 24, 25 or something like that, and they say he was just exceptional. Nathan Buckley's a great player, and I've coached Swanee, and he's won his Brownlow, and he's a great player. But the fact that he's played 19 years, 2 premiership player, multiple best and fairest, scored high in the Brownlow nearly every year of his career. In the modern era, he'd have to be the most consistently best player. And I say consistent because you rarely get a bad game there.
The footprint he's left this footy club is going to be a huge one. From games played to disposals, but to a deeper footprint of family, a deeper footprint of professionalism and selflessness. Yeah, the awards and stuff, they'll clearly come his way, during and post his career, but it's more than that. I think he'll be remembered for a lot of things, but maybe even that last quarter of the grand final will be one of his greatest ever.
For the entirety of the 150 years plus of Collingwood's history, there was only 2 players that have got over 300, and Pendles is about to be the first to get over 400, which is a full 100 games, 5 seasons above what anyone was able to do before he stepped through the doors. I think playing for Collingwood brings an extra pressure of its own, and potentially Pendles' ability to actually let all of that go, because it's irrelevant. It doesn't help him, so why let it weigh you down? So maybe his ability to get to where he's got to is, you can put it, one of the major reasons is because he's never worried about things that aren't about getting better or aren't about being your best. So he's been a perfect bloke to come in for the club, dual premiership player, bookended his career in many ways with those. But he's also played at an elite level for nearly the entirety of that time. He jumped into his career really quickly. He very rarely had a lull. You look at the Copeland, best and fairest results are an indication of where the coaches view you, and his consistency there has been unmatched. Top 3 finishes, let alone wins. There hasn't been a player who's contributed as much for as long as he has, in my view, and that makes him the best player that's ever played the game.
The calm and grace of Scott Pendlebury.